Our planet, a vibrant sphere of breathtaking beauty and astonishing biodiversity, also possesses an untamed, formidable power. Forces that have shaped continents and carved landscapes over millennia can, in mere moments, unleash events of unimaginable scale and destructive capability. These are not malevolent acts, but rather the Earth's complex systems in motion. The shifting of tectonic plates, the fury of atmospheric phenomena, the immense pressure building within its molten heart. Welcome to our channel. Today we're counting down the top 10 worst natural disasters in history. Stay tuned to learn about these catastrophic events that changed the world forever. Humanity, for all its ingenuity and advancement, remains profoundly vulnerable to these elemental outbursts. Our sprawling cities and intricate societies are often built upon fault lines in the paths of ancient floods or on coastlines exposed to the ocean's might. When these forces awaken, the consequences can be devastating, reshaping not only the physical world, but also the course of human history, testing our resilience and our capacity for compassion in the face of overwhelming loss. In this journey, we will explore events that have left indelible scars on our collective memory. We shall look at the sheer magnitude of these disasters, the tragic human cost, and the profound environmental transformations they wrought. Understanding these occurrences is not merely an academic exercise, it is a crucial step in appreciating the dynamic and sometimes perilous world we inhabit, and perhaps in learning how to better coexist with the immense natural energies that surround us. The Earth reminds us, often with tragic emphasis, of its supreme power. On the morning of December 26, 2004, beneath the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean, the Earth's crust ruptured. A colossal undersea megathrust earthquake, with its epicenter off the west coast of northern Sumatra, Indonesia, registered a magnitude of over 9.1. This was not merely a tremor, but a violent tearing of the seabed along a fault line stretching for nearly 1,000 miles. The immense energy released displaced an unimaginable volume of water, birthing a series of waves that would travel, largely unseen at first, across the entire expanse of the ocean. These were not ordinary wind-driven waves, but tsunamis, walls of water moving at the speed of a jet aircraft in the deep ocean, slowing and growing to terrifying heights as they approached shallow coastal waters. 14 countries, scattered across 2 continents, lay unsuspecting in their path. From the densely populated shores of Indonesia and Sri Lanka to the distant coasts of Thailand, India, and even as far as Somalia in East Africa, the sea was about to deliver a blow of almost unprecedented ferocity. The sheer scale of the ocean involved meant the devastation would be widespread and tragically comprehensive. The first wave struck with little to no warning in many areas. Coastal communities, bustling with morning activity or enjoying the holiday season, were engulfed. The force was cataclysmic, sweeping away entire villages, reducing sturdy buildings to rubble, and transforming vibrant landscapes into scenes of utter desolation. Boats were tossed inland like toys, cars submerged, and lives extinguished in moments. The relentless surge of water penetrated miles inland in some areas, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair that stretched for thousands of miles of coastline. The human cost was staggering. Over 230,000 souls were lost, their lives abruptly ended by the ocean's surge. Millions more were left homeless, bereaved, and facing an uncertain future. The psychological trauma inflicted upon survivors, many of whom witnessed unspeakable horrors and lost entire families, would endure for years. A persistent echo of that fateful day. The immediate aftermath was a scene of chaos, as nations and international aid organizations grappled with the sheer scale of the humanitarian crisis, striving to provide food, shelter, and medical care amidst the ruins. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami served as a brutal reminder of the power concealed within our planet's oceans and the vulnerability of coastal populations. It spurred significant advancements in tsunami detection and warning systems worldwide, particularly in the Indian Ocean basin, which previously had none. Yet the memory of its passage remains a somber testament to nature's capacity for sudden, overwhelming destruction and the enduring need for respect and preparedness when living by the sea's edge. The scars on the land may slowly heal, but the scars on human hearts remain. On the afternoon of January 12, 2010, the ground beneath Haiti, the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere, began to heave with terrifying violence. A catastrophic earthquake registering a magnitude of 7.0 struck just 16 miles west of its densely populated capital, Port-au-Prince. The shallow depth of the quake, a mere 8 miles below the surface, meant that the energy released was transferred directly and brutally to the structures and people above. For a nation already grappling with immense challenges, this was a blow of almost unimaginable proportions. The city of Port-au-Prince, a sprawling metropolis characterized by informal settlements and buildings constructed with little adherence to seismic codes, crumbled with horrifying speed. Concrete structures pancaked, trapping tens of thousands within their collapsing walls. The presidential palace, a symbol of the nation, was grievously damaged. The national cathedral lay in ruins. Roads buckled and split, communication lines were severed, and a thick pall of dust rose above the city, obscuring a scene of utter devastation and human suffering. The very fabric of Haitian society was torn apart in minutes. The immediate aftermath was one of chaos and desperation. With government infrastructure crippled and emergency services overwhelmed or destroyed, survivors were left to fend for themselves and each other. Ordinary citizens, armed with little more than their bare hands, dug tirelessly through rubble in desperate attempts to reach trapped loved ones. Hospitals, those that remained standing, were quickly inundated with casualties far exceeding their capacity, forcing doctors to perform life-saving procedures in makeshift conditions with dwindling supplies. The cries of the injured and the grieving filled the air. The scale of the human tragedy was immense. Estimates of the death toll vary, but figures suggest that around 160,000 people perished, with some estimates reaching as high as 220,000 or even 316,000. Hundreds of thousands more were injured, and over 1 million people were rendered homeless, forced to live in sprawling, unsanitary tent cities that sprang up across the devastated landscape. The earthquake didn't just destroy buildings, it shattered lives, families, and the already fragile economy of a nation struggling with poverty and political instability. The international response was swift but faced enormous logistical challenges. Damaged ports and airports, blocked roads, and the sheer scale of the need hampered relief efforts. While aid poured in from around the world, distributing it effectively to those most in need proved incredibly difficult. The 2010 Haiti earthquake laid bare the profound vulnerabilities that arise when poverty and natural hazards intersect, leaving a legacy of destruction that the nation continues to grapple with. A stark reminder of how seismic fury can compound existing hardship into a catastrophe of heartbreaking proportions. In the early hours of April 26, 1986, deep within the Soviet Union, in what is now northern Ukraine, a catastrophic event unfolded at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was not an earthquake nor a storm, but a disaster born of human design and error, yet its consequences would rival the destructive force of many natural cataclysms. A poorly designed and improperly executed safety test on the number 4 reactor led to a sudden, uncontrolled power surge. This, in turn, triggered a series of explosions that tore the reactor apart and ignited a ferocious graphite fire. The immediate blast claimed the lives of 2 plant workers, but this was merely the horrifying prelude to a much larger, unseen tragedy. The explosions breached the reactor core, spewing a vast plume of highly radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere. This toxic cloud, carrying materials such as cesium-137 and strontium-90, drifted on the prevailing winds, contaminating vast swathes of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, and depositing radioactive fallout across much of the northern hemisphere, from Scandinavia to Western Europe. The fire raged for 10 days, continuously releasing these deadly particles. The initial response was characterized by confusion and, tragically, by a lack of transparency. Firefighters, unaware of the lethal levels of radiation, battled the blaze with heroic but ultimately fatal courage. Many succumbed to acute radiation sickness within weeks. The nearby city of Pripyat, home to the plant's workers and their families, was not evacuated for over 36 hours. Its residents unknowingly exposed to dangerously high levels of radiation. When the evacuation finally came, it was sudden and permanent, leaving Pripyat a ghost city frozen in time. The long-term consequences of Chernobyl are profound and multifaceted. An exclusion zone covering over 1,000 square miles was established around the plant, an area deemed too contaminated for human habitation. Thousands of people were resettled, their lives irrevocably altered. The health impacts have been significant, with a documented increase in thyroid cancers, particularly among children exposed at the time of the disaster. The full extent of other long-term health effects on the wider population continues to be a subject of study and debate, an invisible burden carried by generations. Chernobyl stands as the worst nuclear disaster in history, a chilling testament to the immense power contained within the atom and the catastrophic potential when that power is mishandled. It forced a global re-evaluation of nuclear safety protocols and highlighted the transboundary nature of such disasters. Today, the entombed reactor remains a sarcophagus of radioactive material, a silent, enduring warning, while the surrounding forests, paradoxically, have seen a resurgence of wildlife in the absence of humans, a strange and unsettling new ecosystem forged in the crucible of radioactive contamination. On the afternoon of May 12, 2008, the Longmanshan Fault, a massive thrust structure that marks the eastern border of the Tibetan Plateau, ruptured with devastating force. A powerful earthquake measuring 7.9 on the moment magnitude scale struck the mountainous Sichuan province in southwestern China. Its epicenter was in Wenchuan County, a region characterized by steep valleys and densely populated towns and villages, many nestled precariously on hillsides. The tremors were felt across China and in several neighboring countries, heralding a disaster of immense proportions. The seismic waves ripped through the earth, causing catastrophic damage over an area of tens of thousands of square miles. Buildings, many constructed with inadequate reinforcement, particularly in rural areas and smaller towns, collapsed like houses of cards. The mountainous terrain amplified the destruction. Entire hillsides gave way in massive landslides, burying roads, villages and infrastructure, cutting off vast areas from the outside world. The sheer geological violence reshaped the landscape, damming rivers and creating new, unstable quake lakes that posed secondary threats of flooding. The human toll was heartbreaking. Nearly 87,000 people were confirmed dead or missing, with many more injured. Among the most tragic aspects of the disaster was the collapse of numerous schools, burying thousands of children. This sparked widespread grief and anger, raising painful questions about building standards and corruption. The images of parents desperately searching for their children amidst the rubble and the rows of small coffins became enduring symbols of the earthquake's cruelty and the vulnerability of the young. Rescue efforts were monumental but fraught with extreme difficulty. The rugged terrain, combined with extensive damage to roads and bridges, made accessing the hardest-hit areas a perilous undertaking. Soldiers, emergency workers and volunteers poured into the region, often having to trek for miles on foot, carrying supplies and equipment. The scale of the displacement was enormous, with millions left homeless, facing the immediate challenges of shelter, food and clean water, and the longer-term prospect of rebuilding their shattered lives and communities from the ground up. The 2008 Sichuan Earthquake was a stark demonstration of the destructive power that can be unleashed when tectonic plates collide in heavily populated, mountainous regions. It prompted a massive national rebuilding program in China, with significant investment in infrastructure and stricter building codes. Yet, the scars remain both on the land and in the collective memory of a nation that witnessed such profound loss. It underscored the constant dynamic interplay between the Earth's geological forces and the human settlements that lie in their path, a reminder of the need for vigilance and resilience. In November 1970, a tropical depression formed in the southern Bay of Bengal, a vast expanse of warm water known for generating some of the world's most powerful and deadly cyclones. Over several days, this system steadily intensified, feeding on the ocean's heat and moisture, its winds spiraling into a ferocious vortex. By November 11th, it had become a severe cyclonic storm designated the Boler Cyclone, and it was tracking ominously northwards towards the densely populated Ganges Delta, one of the most vulnerable coastal regions on Earth. The Ganges Delta, encompassing much of what was then East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, and parts of India's West Bengal, is a low-lying labyrinth of rivers, islands and floodplains. Millions of people lived on these fertile but perilous lands, often in fragile dwellings with little protection against the elements. As the Boler Cyclone approached, it reached its peak intensity, with winds estimated at over 115 miles per hour, making it equivalent to a Category 3 hurricane. But it was not just the wind that posed the greatest threat, it was the sea itself. On the night of November 12th and into the early hours of November 13th, the cyclone made landfall, coinciding tragically with a high tide. This confluence of events produced a catastrophic storm surge, a massive wall of water estimated to be as high as 33 feet in some areas. This surge swept across the low-lying islands and coastal districts with terrifying speed and power, inundating hundreds of square miles of land. Entire islands were submerged, villages obliterated, and vast numbers of people and livestock were swept away by the raging waters. The devastation was almost beyond comprehension. In the darkness and chaos, there was little escape. The sheer force of the water, combined with the high winds, destroyed everything in its path. Estimates of the death toll vary widely due to the scale of the destruction and the ensuing political turmoil, but it is generally accepted that the Boler Cyclone claimed the lives of between 300,000 and 500,000 people, making it the deadliest tropical cyclone ever recorded, and one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history. The loss of life was concentrated in the coastal regions where the storm surge was most severe. The aftermath was horrific. The landscape was littered with bodies and debris. Agricultural land was ruined by saltwater intrusion, and fresh water sources were contaminated, leading to outbreaks of disease like cholera. The response to the disaster by the Pakistani government, then based in West Pakistan, was widely criticized as inadequate and slow, further fueling the existing political tensions that would eventually lead to the Bangladesh Liberation War the following year. The Boler Cyclone remains a harrowing example of the extreme vulnerability of deltaic populations to cyclonic storms and the catastrophic consequences when nature's fury meets human unpreparedness. On the afternoon of March 11, 2011, the seabed off the Oshika Peninsula of Japan's Tohoku region experienced a violent rupture, a massive undersea megathrust earthquake with a magnitude of 9.0 to 9.1, the most powerful ever recorded in Japan and the fourth most powerful in the world since modern record-keeping began, unleashed its colossal energy. The epicenter was relatively shallow, about 130 kilometers east of Sendai, Honshu. The shaking was so intense that it was felt across Japan and even shifted the Earth on its axis. The earthquake itself caused significant damage, toppling buildings, buckling roads, and triggering widespread fires. However, Japan, a nation accustomed to seismic activity, has developed some of the world's most stringent building codes and advanced earthquake preparedness measures. While the shaking was terrifying and destructive, it was the secondary effect of this colossal submarine quake that would prove even more catastrophic. The upward thrust of the seafloor, by as much as 50 meters in some places, displaced an enormous volume of water, generating a series of devastating tsunami waves. These waves, some reaching heights of over 40 meters as they funneled into bays and estuaries, traveled towards Japan's northeastern coast at incredible speed. Despite an advanced tsunami warning system and extensive seawalls in many coastal communities, the sheer scale and power of the 2011 tsunami overwhelmed many of these defenses. Water surged miles inland, sweeping away homes, businesses, vehicles, and infrastructure. Entire towns were obliterated, transformed into vast debris fields under a torrent of churning water, mud, and wreckage. The images broadcast to the world were apocalyptic. The human cost was immense, with over 19,700 confirmed deaths and thousands more injured or missing. Their relentless waves not only claimed lives but also shattered communities and livelihoods along hundreds of miles of coastline. Beyond the immediate destruction caused by the earthquake and tsunami, a third crisis was unfolding at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The tsunami disabled the plant's cooling systems, leading to a series of meltdowns, hydrogen explosions, and the release of significant radioactive material, resulting in a widespread evacuation and long-term environmental contamination. The 2011 Tohoku event was a triple disaster: earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear accident that tested Japan's renowned resilience to its limits. It highlighted that even the best prepared nations can be overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of nature's power. The disaster prompted a national re-evaluation of tsunami defenses, nuclear safety protocols, and disaster response strategies. The recovery and rebuilding process has been long and arduous, a testament to the enduring spirit of a nation facing unimaginable loss, and a stark reminder of the complex, interconnected threats that can arise when powerful natural forces interact with modern technological society. Chapter 7. The Year Without a Summer: Mount Tambora's Global Impact. In April 1815, on the island of Sumbawa, in what is now Indonesia, the volcano Mount Tambora, which had been rumbling for several years, erupted with a cataclysmic force rarely witnessed in recorded history. The eruption, which peaked over several days from April 10th, was the largest and most explosive volcanic event in over 1,300 years, registering a 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, a supercolossal event. The mountain, once one of the tallest peaks in the Indonesian archipelago, literally blew itself apart, ejecting an estimated 160 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and pumice. The immediate effects were devastating for the local population. Pyroclastic flows, superheated avalanches of gas, ash, and rock, swept down the volcano's flanks at tremendous speed, obliterating villages and incinerating everything in their path. Heavy ashfall blanketed Sumbawa and neighboring islands, collapsing homes, destroying crops, and contaminating water sources. Tsunamis generated by the collapse of the volcano's caldera into the sea struck nearby coastlines, adding to the destruction. Tens of thousands of people perished in the initial eruption and its immediate aftermath due to burns, asphyxiation, and starvation. But the impact of Tambora was not confined to the Indonesian archipelago, it was global. The sheer volume of sulfur dioxide and other aerosols ejected high into the stratosphere formed a vast veil that gradually spread around the Earth. This stratospheric haze reflected incoming solar radiation, leading to a significant worldwide cooling effect. The year 1816, following the eruption, became known as the Year Without a Summer in many parts of the Northern Hemisphere, particularly in Europe and North America. This volcanic winter brought unseasonal frosts, snowfalls in summer, and dramatically shortened growing seasons. Widespread crop failures led to severe food shortages, famine, and disease across Europe, North America, and even parts of Asia. Grain prices soared, leading to riots and social unrest. Malnutrition weakened populations, making them more susceptible to outbreaks of typhus and other epidemics. The ecological disruption was profound, affecting agriculture, livestock, and human health on a continental scale, a clear demonstration of how a single geological event can have far-reaching climatic consequences. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora stands as a stark reminder of the immense power of volcanoes to alter global climate and impact human civilization. It is estimated that around 71,000 people died directly or indirectly as a result of the eruption and its climatic effects, though some estimates are higher. The event also had cultural repercussions, with the gloomy weather inspiring literary works like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Tambora's legacy underscores the interconnectedness of Earth's systems and the profound, long-lasting influence that major volcanic events can exert upon the entire planet and its inhabitants. Chapter 8. The Drowning Land, the Great China Floods of 1931. The summer of 1931 witnessed a natural disaster of almost unimaginable proportions in China, a series of catastrophic floods that are considered among the deadliest in human history. The preceding years had seen prolonged drought, but this was followed by an exceptionally heavy period of snowfall during the winter of 1930 to 1931 in the interior. As spring arrived, this snow melted rapidly, coinciding with unusually torrential spring rains and then an unprecedented 7 major cyclonic storms that battered central China during July alone, far exceeding the average of 2 per year. This confluence of extreme weather events overwhelmed the country's major river systems, the Yangtze, the Yellow, and the Huai. Dikes and levees, many of which were poorly maintained, were breached in hundreds of places or simply overtopped by the sheer volume of water. The resulting inundation was vast, covering an area estimated to be larger than England and half of Scotland combined. The Yangtze River in particular reached record high water marks, transforming its fertile valley into an enormous inland sea. Cities like Wuhan and Nanjing were severely flooded, with water levels remaining high for weeks, even months. The human impact was catastrophic. Millions were displaced from their homes as the waters rose, often with little warning. They sought refuge on any high ground available: rooftops, trees, or already overcrowded embankments, often surrounded by a vast expanse of muddy, debris-filled water. Drowning was an immediate cause of death for many, but the aftermath brought even greater suffering. The floods destroyed vast areas of agricultural land, leading to widespread famine. Starvation became rampant, forcing people to desperate measures for survival. Compounding the misery, the stagnant floodwaters became breeding grounds for diseases. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid fever swept through the displaced populations, who were living in unsanitary conditions with little access to clean water, food, or medical care. The breakdown of infrastructure, including transportation and communication, severely hampered relief efforts. The sheer scale of the disaster overwhelmed the nationalist government, which was already grappling with internal conflicts and the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. Estimates of the death toll from the 1931 China floods vary significantly, ranging from a conservative 145,000, official government figures at the time, likely a gross underestimate, to more widely accepted figures by modern scholars of between 1 million and 4 million people. These figures encompass not only those who drowned, but also those who succumbed to starvation and disease in the months that followed. The Great China Floods of 1931 serve as a terrifying reminder of the destructive potential of extreme weather events when combined with vulnerable populations and inadequate infrastructure, etching a deep scar into China's history. Chapter 9. The Isle of Doom, the 1900 Galveston Hurricane. At the dawn of the 20th century, Galveston, Texas was a thriving port city, a jewel of the Gulf Coast and one of the wealthiest cities per capita in the United States. Built on a low-lying barrier island, its prosperity was intimately tied to the sea. However, this proximity to the ocean also made it exceptionally vulnerable to the fury of tropical storms. On September 8, 1900, this vulnerability was exposed with devastating consequences by a hurricane of immense power, an event that would become the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history. The storm, which had formed in the tropical Atlantic, was not initially perceived as an exceptional threat. Weather forecasting at the time was rudimentary compared to modern standards, and warnings from the U.S. Weather Bureau were downplayed by local officials, partly due to a desire to avoid alarming the public and disrupting commerce. Many residents, accustomed to occasional storms, underestimated the danger. As the hurricane approached, its true strength became terrifyingly apparent, with winds estimated to have reached Category 4 intensity, gusting up to 145 miles per hour. The most destructive element, however, was the storm surge. As the powerful hurricane made landfall, it pushed a massive wall of water, estimated to be over 15 feet high, across Galveston Island. The island's highest point was less than 9 feet above sea level. The surge inundated virtually the entire city, sweeping inland with irresistible force. Buildings, even those considered sturdy, were battered and then lifted from their foundations, collapsing into the churning waters or being carried away like driftwood. A vast debris field composed of shattered remnants of homes and businesses acted like a battering ram, destroying everything in its path. The scene was one of utter chaos and horror. Thousands were trapped in their homes as the waters rose, with little hope of escape. The winds tore structures apart, and the relentless surge carried people and debris for miles. When the storm finally passed, it left behind a landscape of almost complete desolation. An estimated 3,600 buildings were destroyed. The city's infrastructure, bridges, railways, telegraph lines, was obliterated, isolating Galveston from the outside world and hampering initial rescue and relief efforts. The human cost was catastrophic. It is estimated that between 6,000 and 12,000 people lost their lives in Galveston and the surrounding areas, the majority drowning in the storm surge. The exact number will never be known. The aftermath was grim, with the daunting task of recovering and burying the dead. The 1900 Galveston Hurricane spurred a remarkable feat of engineering: the construction of a massive seawall and the raising of the city's grade by several feet. This event forever changed Galveston and served as a harsh lesson in coastal vulnerability and the critical importance of heeding nature's warnings. Chapter 10. The Roar That Shook the World. Krakatoa's Cataclysmic Eruption. In August 1883, the volcanic island of Krakatoa, situated in the Sunda Strait between the Indonesian islands of Java and Sumatra, produced one of the most violent and dramatic eruptions in recorded history. The volcano had been showing signs of activity for several months, with smaller explosions and ash emissions, but on August 26th and 27th, it entered its paroxysmal phase, a series of 4 colossal explosions that reverberated around the globe. The sound of the final largest explosion was reportedly heard over 3,000 miles away, as far as Perth in Australia and Rodrigues near Mauritius. The force of these explosions was immense, estimated to be many times more powerful than the largest thermonuclear bomb ever detonated. The blasts tore the island apart, ejecting an estimated 20 cubic kilometers of rock, ash and pumice into the atmosphere. Vast pyroclastic flows, superheated currents of gas and volcanic debris raced across the surface of the sea, traveling as far as 25 miles and devastating coastal areas on Java and Sumatra, incinerating entire villages and their inhabitants. The sky was plunged into darkness for days over a wide region. The collapse of the volcano's caldera into the sea generated a series of enormous tsunamis, some reaching heights of over 120 feet. These waves radiated outwards, overwhelming coastal settlements along the Sunda Strait and even causing damage in distant harbors. The tsunamis were the primary cause of death, sweeping away an estimated 36,000 people. Entire communities were obliterated, their locations marked only by the debris washed ashore. The sea itself was choked with pumice, forming vast floating rafts that hindered shipping for months. The atmospheric effects of the Krakatoa eruption were spectacular and widespread. The fine ash and aerosols injected high into the stratosphere circled the Earth multiple times, causing vibrant, unusually colored sunsets and sunrises around the world for several years. These Krakatoa sunsets were noted by artists and observers globally. The volcanic dust also acted as a solar radiation filter, leading to a measurable decrease in global average temperatures for a few years following the eruption, a phenomenon similar to, though less severe than, that caused by Tambora. Krakatoa's eruption was a landmark event, not only for its sheer violence, but also because it occurred at a time when global communication, via telegraph, allowed news of the disaster and its subsequent atmospheric phenomena to spread relatively quickly. It became one of the first major natural disasters to be studied scientifically on a global scale. The island of Krakatoa itself was almost entirely destroyed, with only a remnant remaining. In its place, decades later, a new volcanic cone, Anak Krakatau, child of Krakatoa, emerged from the sea, a potent reminder of the enduring geological forces that shaped and continue to reshape our planet. We have journeyed through 10 accounts of nature's most formidable displays, events that have irrevocably shaped our world and left deep imprints on human history. From the shuddering of the Earth's crust to the fury of its atmosphere and the explosive power held within its core, these disasters reveal the sheer scale of the energies that govern our planet. They are stark reminders that beneath the veneer of our daily lives, the Earth remains a dynamic and, at times, perilous entity. The forces at play are ancient, powerful, and largely indifferent to human endeavor. Yet amidst the devastation and loss, a recurring theme emerges: the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring capacity for compassion and cooperation. In the face of such overwhelming adversity, communities have come together, strangers have helped strangers, and incredible feats of courage and endurance have been recorded. These events, while tragic, also spur innovation, leading to better understanding, improved warning systems, and more resilient infrastructure. We learn, often through bitter experience, how to better adapt to and respect the environments we inhabit. The study of these catastrophic events is not merely about chronicling destruction. It is about understanding the intricate workings of our planet and our place within it. It is about fostering a deeper respect for the natural world and striving for a more sustainable and prepared coexistence. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Let us know in the comments which disaster you found most shocking, for the Earth continues its timeless processes, and humanity must continue to learn, adapt, and endure.